know, we're Reeve and Crystal. We've lived in Alaska our whole lives, and we're gonna show you the top 5 things that we do to get our homestead ready for winter.
All right, y'all, as you can see, it's fall here in Alaska, and up here we have a short couple weeks from the time these leaves start turning until it starts freezing up.
That's why we still have all the things to do, even though we probably sound like death and have the plague. So, sorry about that.
Cough on cue, good
Right,
job.
I know, sorry. The first thing on our list, you might have guessed this one, we gotta get the garden in. Now here in Alaska, we garden from our last frost date to our first frost date. That usually gives us about 80 to 90 days, depending on where you live. There's a lot of microclimates in Alaska because it's so big. Now things like these cabbages, they'll be able to handle the first frost. And this Brussels sprout will actually do better if we let it go past the first frost. It'll help us be able to remove the Brussels sprouts off the stalk. If you've ever done that, you know that's a huge pain in the rear end. However, zucchinis, they can't handle the first frost. They can't handle any frost. That's a beaut. And these tomatoes definitely need to get picked before it frosts. As you might notice, they're not ripe. And that often happens in Alaska. This is the extent of our tomato growth when we don't grow in a greenhouse. You want to show them, honey? We're smart. We actually do have a greenhouse, but that is what's left of our greenhouse. We'll get back to that when we get to item 3. So you might wonder what we're gonna do with all these green tomatoes, and some of them are pretty small, right? These are some green tomatoes that my wonderful neighbor grew at her house, and she made this beautiful salsa and shared it with us. Now this one, he's close to ripe. I'll put him in a box and he'll ripen in a couple days. This guy though, not a chance. He don't be salsa. Now this is our beautiful potato patch. Potatoes grow really great in Alaska. Last year we got 465 pounds of potatoes. And we're not gonna harvest these today because we wait till they die back a little bit more, like this guy here, okay? Then we know all the nutrients and all the goodness have gone into the potato, then they'll be ready to harvest. They can usually handle a frost or two. One more very important thing, if you don't wanna buy hoses every year, you gotta drain all your hoses and empty all the water out of them, otherwise they freeze with ice and expands and you'll ruin all your hoses every year. So I start actually at the end and drain all the water out. Maybe the water's gonna drain out. There we go, look it. That's my beautiful rhubarb back there. I better harvest that before it frosts too, because the leaves, they turn to goo after it frosts, and that's real gross, but I'm gonna harvest that and make barbecue sauce out of it.
Come on, go. Now you might have heard these 25 crazies hollering in the background, and that brings us to number 2, making sure your animals' needs are met for the winter. And that starts with hay. Now it might seem a little obvious, but the hay situation here in Alaska is a little complicated. Because we have such a short growing season during the summer, and the last month or so of that is nothing but rain, in Alaska, generally, we're gonna get 1 cutting of hay on a good year. On a super good year, you might be lucky enough to get 2. That means if you wanna get good quality local hay, you're gonna have to jump on it before winter hits, because by the time the middle of winter's here, it's all gone.
Tell them how much it is, Reeve.
Well, because of the scarcity, this local hay at a good deal was $170 for a round bale.
That's a good deal, you guys. We were ecstatic to get it $170 a bale.
And if you don't get your hay before it runs out, then you have to start buying the hay that gets shipped in from the lower 48. That hay, if you buy it a pallet at a time, and if you pay cash, compressed 50-pound bales are going to run you about 25 bucks a piece.
Making it rain, boys.
Somebody is raining for somebody.
Yeah, it ain't rain. We're making the rain and somebody else is using all the rain. Put it in the pocket. That's what's happening.
Right. And if you think that's expensive, straw is even worse. Now, where you live, straw might be about the same price as a cup of coffee, but up here in Alaska, we don't grow any grains, so straw is about the same price as a bale of hay.
How much is that, Reeve?
About 25 bucks for a square bale. Which means for bedding, we take this straw that touches the ground, because if you've ever met a goat, you know that as soon as this hay gets within 3 inches of the ground, they want nothing to do with it. And we gather this up and use this as our bedding.
Now, although our livestock guardian dogs are the cutest animals and hardest working animals on the farm, the goats are definitely the highest income producing. Now, we've had lots of success this year selling goat's milk and goat cheese at the farmer's market, as well as goat's milk soap like this Foo Hot Chocolate one, or essential oil lemon poppy seed, and shampoo bars. We do have a website, theflattirefarm.com, if you want to buy goat's milk soap or beard balm so that you don't get the beard shakings. Tell them what it is, Reeve.
It's the reason that you can't wear a black shirt in the winter, because you scratch your beard because it's itchy, and then little white yuckies get in there and you call them beard shakings and Miss Crystal gets mad at you.
Yeah, and that was the birth of that product, I'll tell you what.
Now, because we've had such great success with all of our goat's milk products, that means Miss Crystal has let me double our goat herd. More goats means more animal housing. Now, you might think that since our winters are so long and cold that we're going to have them in heated structures. Lifelong Alaskans like us do not heat their animal structures because it's not what they need and it's actually bad for them. So we built these 3-sided structures to get the animals in out of the snow and the rain, and it also blocks the wind pretty well. And we built them on skids so that we can move them around. If we ever want to move the animals, we just drag this shelter over and set it up in a new spot. Now, this big 3-sided shelter is not going to be enough to keep them warm. It will keep them dry, but to keep them warm, we give them these little, we'll call them cuddle huts. Notice there's no door. You don't want a door on there. You also don't want it heated, and both for the same reason. Now, these guys, they're going to go crawling in here, and they're going to stuff as many of them in there as they can. We've seen 5 goats come out of one of these things. But what they do is they cuddle in there, and they keep each other warm. But with the open door and the lack of heat, everything is going to, deep underneath, stay frozen. There's not going to be a bunch of moisture. Now, whether it's for chickens, goats, dogs, anything else, if you have a structure that's heated during the winter, it's going to melt all the snow and ice inside there, and you're going to have a whole bunch of moisture trapped inside that building. And that is what's going to lead to your animals getting sick over the course of the winter. Hi, buddy. He's like, what are you doing in here? Now, that moisture is going to cause 2 main problems. First, if they're trapped in there with all of the moist urine and manure and even just their bodies, the amount of ammonia in this small little structure is going to build up and that'll weaken the respiratory systems. That's number 1. Number 2, if they're sitting in all that moisture, they're going to get wet, and it's going to completely compromise their ability to keep themselves warm. Imagine if you just took a shower and you stepped out of that shower and then ran outside and it was 20 below. That's exactly what they would feel too. It would be super cold for them. So we give them something to get out of the wind, something to stay dry, and something to get up next to each other to conserve all that body heat so that they can acclimate to the cold and learn how to keep themselves warm. That's the best way to go, isn't it, buddy? Yeah.
Okay, guys, that brings us to number 3. Get ready for snow removal. Wah, wah. And the most important part of that, you might be surprised, know where your stuff is. Now, when we first moved to our property, it was winter when we finally got into the cabin, and we didn't have a real driveway yet, and we have really great neighbors, so all of our stuff, including our giant snow plow, was at our neighbor's house. Well, it snowed how many feet?
About 3 feet.
It snowed 3 feet, and we have a half-mile driveway. So it took us 10 hours to get from the cabin to the end of the road so that we could get out to even get to the plow. Yeah.
Yep.
Make sure you have all your snow removal stuff exactly where you know where it is and it's accessible. Yeah.
Not at the neighbor's house.
Not at the neighbor's house.
Okay, so we kind of lied. In Alaska, because the winter is so long and that snow is not going to melt for at least 6 months, we're not actually removing the snow, we're just moving it and stacking it. So we need to plan for where we're going to stack that snow. We call them snow dumps, and this is one of them. From this area right here where I'm standing, all the way back behind me to the driveway, needs to be cleared out so we can stack snow. And this is only one of 5 around here on the homestead that I need to make sure are clear before winter hits. This is another snow dump. Behind me is another one. As you can see, I got a bit of work to do here, and there's 2 more after that. Now, in addition to not leaving your snowplow at the neighbor's house, remember where your roof rake is. Because for every roof that you have that will not handle 100 pounds per square foot of snow load, you're gonna have to keep the snow off of it all winter long. So remember that mangled up greenhouse that we told you we'd get back to? That beautiful hoop house that we made out of our Quonset hut and turned into an awesome greenhouse? Well, it got crushed by the snow load. That's because we did not keep the snow off of it. Now this shelter logic right here is actually the second shelter logic to be sitting in this spot because the first one also got crushed by snow. Not because we didn't keep the snow off the top, because we did, we kept shoveling the snow off the top, but because here in Alaska there's so much snow and it doesn't go away all winter long, that snow, as it was coming off the top, kept building up here and building up here until it had nowhere else to go but push into the side of the shelter logic and compromise it, causing it to still get crushed by the snow. And that brings me to my next snow removal point. Any roof that needs to get shoveled off or that's going to shed the snow off by itself needs to have a snow lane all the way around it. A snow lane is an area all the way around that structure that we can use to get a snow blower, snow shovel, or plow in and around and take all that snow that came off the roof and get it out from beside the structure.
Okay guys, that brings us to point number 4. Get your equipment ready. All right, let's talk about winterizing your vehicle. Whether you have a car or a truck, there's one simple thing that you're really gonna wanna do, because if you forget, you'll only do it once and you'll never make that mistake again. You need to change your washer fluid to a winter temperature washer fluid. Where we live here in Willow, Alaska, we pick something that's at least can handle negative 20 degrees. Otherwise, you are gonna freeze all of your washer fluid junk. All right, next topic, tires. Most people that live in Alaska change their tires over in the winter time and they run studded tires. If you don't know what studded tires are, they're like little metal grippy guys in your tires that help you not slip on the ice. If you're gonna move to Alaska or new to Alaska, I would recommend getting studded tires on right away, right when the snow starts falling. We try to wait as long as we can until the roads are just, really until it's ice road trucking. Because 1, the studs damage the roads, and 2, studded tires are extremely expensive, and the longer that you run them on the road without the ice to buffer the studs, it wears them down really fast. I can get 2 or 3 years out of a pair of studded tires or a set of studded tires, but studded tires for my truck are about $1,300 right now, so we try to protect them and save them as long as we can. The last thing I do to my vehicle before winter, and this is something I never forget, it's extremely important to me, I make sure that I get my cold weather gear in the truck. I have an extra set of extreme cold weather gear that just lives in my truck all winter long. I remember as a kid, our car breaking down and you just walk outside in the freezing cold and pray that somebody comes and picks you up and drives you home. So I haven't forgotten that. We live pretty far out away from any major town or city, so there's a lot of roads that aren't maintained, roads without guardrails, you know, sharp rocks at the bottom, all the things. So these are the 3 things that I really take with me. An extreme pair of boots. These are Baffin boots. I think they're called Icefield boots, but they're rated for negative 148 degrees. So if I have to walk down the highway, or if my truck tumbles down the cliff and I survive, it'll be a long time before my feet freeze. So I'm real happy about that. Next, I keep a couple of hats with me. Here's a shameless plug. Here's our Flat Tire Farm swag. You can also find it on the website. But I keep a thin fleece hat as kind of like, it's like underwear for your hat in the winter. And then also a second hat that will go over this hat. And this one is knitted on the outside and has a liner on the inside. So I'll have double coverage because if it's negative 40, I need to keep my face and my ears warm, and yeah, so 2 hats it is. And then these gloves, this is the last thing I keep in the truck. These gloves are, they're Thinsulate gloves. They're leather on the outside, Thinsulate on the inside, super padded. You can't really do any work, or you have no you know, manipulation ability with your hands with them, but they're gonna keep me from freezing to death. And I just tuck all that stuff in my boots and then put it in the truck and it stays in there till the summer.
Now for all of our small engines like these generators, when fall comes around, we're going to change the oil, and we're going to change from a heavier weight oil to a lighter weight oil. That'll help us with the cold weather starts in the winter. I'll go from like a 1030 oil to say a 530 or a 030 weight oil. Next, I'll just do some simple tune-up stuff in the fall. I'll make sure that my air cleaner is cleaned up, and I'll top off my fuel to make sure that I'm not going to get condensation inside the tank, which can put water into the fuel. Now we'll do those same three things, get our winter weight oil, our tune-up, and keep our fuel tank full for all of our small engines, like this sawmill, this log splitter, and this walk-behind snowblower. Now for the tractor, we're still going to make sure that it's got a good tune-up and that we keep the fuel tank topped off, but we're going to keep the factory recommended oil weight in there, but we are going to change the grease. Where for the summer, we have just a cheap moly lithium grease. In the winter, we're going to switch to a low temperature white lithium grease for all of the loader bucket and all of the 3-point pieces that need it.
Okay guys, we finally made it to the last thing, number 5. The very most important thing that you need to do to prepare for winter is have ready your heat source, because honey, winter is long and cold.
Now most people that heat with firewood have, well, firewood.
Now you might think we're crazy for having this little amount of firewood. Well, we're not crazy, and actually we planned it this way. Let me explain why. Now normally you're going to want to have a winter's worth of firewood, chopped, stacked, all the things a year before you're ready to use it, so that it seasons and dries out and all of its natural moisture doesn't end up in your chimney pipe as creosote. But in our area, we have a unique situation. We had a beetle come through, a spruce bark beetle, and they get up underneath the cambium layer of the bark, which is kind of like the vein of the tree. And basically, they eat all that out and the trees are dead. So we have all these dead standing trees. One is a fire hazard, so we need to get rid of them. But two, because our summers are so short, we need to offload everything that we can do in the winter to the winter time so that we can get more projects done in the summer.
That's right.
You want to see some dead trees?
So right behind me is one of our beetle-killed spruce. If you look up, the entire tree is dead. Now with it standing like that, all the snow and the rain is going to run off of those branches, and the trunk of that tree, which is what we're going to cut into firewood, is going to remain dry. And in fact, it's been dead standing here for so long, the wood's actually seasoned. So come wintertime, I'll just grab my snowshoes, grab my sled, my chainsaw, and I'll head out into the woods and cut the trees down that I need, buck them up, bring them back to the cabin, we'll get them split up, and they're ready to go. Now we've lived through a lot of really cold winters here, so we know that you'd better have a backup, and we do. This is our heating oil tank, and this fuels our Toyo stove, which is our backup.
And even our backup has a backup. This is our backup heating oil tank. It's empty right now because we haven't moved it over to the cabin to fill it up yet. Its name is El Dente. Dense. Got it? He came up with that. He got to get the credit for that. Now, if you use a big tank like this for heating oil, or a tank for propane for your heating source, you're going to want to make sure you get it filled up before winter. You also need to make sure that you don't...
Forget what you want to say when you're making a video.
That does happen all the time.
Take 37.
It's more like 38 or 39, but... If you're building a homestead or planning to build a homestead, you want to put your tanks that are going to have to get filled in the winter somewhere that's not underneath the eaves of a structure where the snow could fall on them and crush them or make them not get towable.
Get towable.
Get towable, and you're also going to want to make sure, it's getting to the end here, boys, let me just tell you. You also want to make sure that you keep a snow lane to it, right? A place cleared of snow that a vehicle could get to it, or a person could get to the tank and fill the tank if it needs to be filled in the middle of winter.
That's right.
All right, guys, if you want to watch the video where our wood stove broke at -30 last winter, I'll put that video on the screen for you.
Or if you want to watch how the year before we broke the chimney off in half, we'll put that on the screen too.
Oh yeah, it was bent, boys. Yeah. Thanks for watching, guys.
Bye.